I watched my mother hang the glittering banner across our living room. Happy 25th birthday, Emma, and felt the familiar ache in my chest. Except this time, I knew exactly what was coming. This time, I remembered. Mom, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my throat. My medical school graduation is tomorrow. You promised you'd be there. She didn't even turn around. Oh, honey, we talked about this. Emma's birthday is more important. You'll have other graduations. This is medical school, Mom. There won't be another one. I'm becoming a doctor. My father looked up from the expensive bottle of champagne he was chilling, champagne that cost more than my textbooks for an entire semester. Don't be selfish, Sarah. Your sister only turns 25 once. You know how much this means to her. I stood there in the doorway of the home I'd grown up in, the home where I'd always been invisible, and smiled. Because this time, I knew something they didn't. In my first life, I'd attended that graduation alone. I'd walked across that stage to collect my medical degree with empty seats where my family should have been, and I'd told myself it didn't matter. I'd told myself I was being selfish for wanting them there. I'd spent the next 3 years working myself to death, literally, trying to prove I was worthy of their love. I died at 28 in my hospital's parking lot, collapsing from exhaustion after a 36-hour shift. My last thought had been wondering if they'd come to my funeral or if it would conflict with Emma's birthday party that year, too. Then I'd woken up at age 21, on the first day of medical school orientation, with every memory of those 7 terrible years burned into my mind like a scar. You're right, Dad, I said sweetly. Emma only turns 25 once. I hope you all have a wonderful time. I turned and left, and I heard my mother's relieved sigh. They thought I'd given in. They thought I'd accepted my place in the family hierarchy once again. They had no idea I'd already been playing a different game for the past 4 years. Let me take you back. Back to when I was 17 and Emma was 21, back to when this pattern first crystallized into something I couldn't ignore anymore. My high school graduation fell on the same weekend as Emma's birthday party. Not her actual birthday, that was 2 weeks later, but the elaborate celebration my parents had planned for her. A garden party with 200 guests, a live band, and a custom cake that cost more than most people's wedding cakes. Sarah, you understand, don't you? My mother had said, not even looking at me as she finalized the catering order. Emma's 21. This is a milestone. Your graduation is just high school. Everyone graduates high school. I'd wanted to scream that I was valedictorian, that I'd earned a full scholarship to pre-med, that this was supposed to be my moment too. Instead, I'd swallowed my tears and nodded. My father hadn't even pretended to be conflicted. Besides, Emma needs us there. You know how sensitive she is. You're the strong one, Sarah. You don't need us holding your hand for everything. So I'd walked across that stage alone. I'd collected my diploma and my academic awards while my parents smiled and laughed at Emma's party. I'd gone home to an empty house afterward, still in my graduation gown, and found a card on the kitchen counter. Congratulations on graduating! Love, Mom and Dad. Inside was a $50 gift card to Target. Emma had gotten a new car for her birthday, a BMW convertible in her favorite color. I'd told myself it was fine. I'd told myself that once I became a doctor, once I achieved something truly remarkable, they'd finally see me. They'd finally be proud. But they never did. Through college, I worked 2 part-time jobs on top of my classes to supplement my scholarship. I called home every week, visited during holidays, sent thoughtful gifts for birthdays and Christmas. Emma, meanwhile, had moved back home after dropping out of her 3rd college major. She worked part-time at a boutique, a job my father had arranged for her through a friend, and spent the rest of her time shopping, brunching with friends, and planning her elaborate social media presence. And our parents doted on her. Every post she made was met with their gushing comments. Every minor inconvenience in her life became a family crisis requiring intervention. When she got a parking ticket, Dad hired a lawyer to fight it. When she had a bad day at work, Mom would take her on a weekend spa trip to recover. When I got accepted to medical school, one of the top programs in the country, I'd received a text. That's nice, honey. Emma's going through a breakup right now, so we're a bit distracted. We'll celebrate later. We never did. Medical school was brutal. The coursework was crushing, the hours were inhuman, and the pressure was relentless. I studied until my eyes burned and my hands cramped. I survived on coffee and granola bars, sleeping 4 hours a night if I was lucky. I borrowed more student loans than I wanted to think about because my part-time jobs weren't enough anymore, and my parents had made it clear that Emma needed their financial support more than I did. You have scholarships, my mother had said when I'd gathered the courage to ask for help with rent. Emma doesn't have those opportunities. We have to help her. Emma, who at 24 was still living at home rent-free, driving her second BMW, the first had been too small, and working 20 hours a week. Every major milestone in medical school fell near Emma's birthday. My white coat ceremony, they had a prior commitment at Emma's friend's gallery opening. My first day of clinical rotations, they were helping Emma move into a new apartment that they'd paid the deposit for. My research presentation that won a departmental award, they forgot to respond to my invitation. But they never missed Emma's birthday celebrations. Ever. The pattern continued through my residency in my first life. I specialized in emergency medicine because I thought if I worked hard enough, if I saved enough lives, if I became important enough, they'd finally see my worth. Instead, I just worked myself into an early grave. My last conversation with them had been about Emma's birthday, her 28th, the same year I was 28. She wanted to go to Paris for it, and they were asking if I could chip in for the trip. I was making residency wages, barely minimum wage when you calculated the hours, and drowning in student debt. But Emma had set her heart on Paris. I'd said no for the first time in my life. Really no. Not I'll try, not maybe next time, but just no, I can't afford it. My mother's voice had turned cold. You've always been so selfish, Sarah. Your sister would do this for you. 3 days later, I collapsed in the parking lot after my shift. A massive heart attack, they told me later. Or rather, they told me before in my first life. Stress-induced cardiomyopathy. My heart had literally given out from exhaustion and emotional strain. I was 28 years old, and I died knowing my family loved my sister more than they'd ever loved me. Then I opened my eyes in my apartment, and my roommate from first year of medical school was shaking my shoulder, telling me we were going to be late for orientation. I'd been given a second chance. For the first week, I thought I was losing my mind. The memories were too vivid, too detailed, too painful to be dreams. But everything I remembered came true. The professors taught the same material in the same order. My classmates said the same things. The news ran the same stories. I was really back. I really had a chance to do it all over again. The question was, what would I do differently? My first instinct was to try harder with my family, to be more present, more vocal about my needs, to somehow make them see me. But then I thought about all the times I'd already tried in my first life. All the times I'd begged for scraps of their attention. All the times I'd told myself that if I just achieved a little more, sacrificed a little more, loved them a little more, they'd finally love me back. It had never worked, and it had killed me. So I made a different choice. I decided to live for myself. It started small. When my mother called during my second week of school, clearly about to ask me to come home for Emma's birthday weekend, I told her I couldn't. I had a study group I couldn't miss. It was true, but in my first life, I'd skipped it to attend Emma's party. This time, I stayed. But Sarah, my mother protested, Emma specifically requested you be there. I'm sorry, Mom. Medical school is very demanding. I'm sure she'll understand. The silence on the other end was deafening. In 21 years, I'd never said no to coming home for Emma. Well, my mother finally said, her voice tight, if that's how you want to prioritize things. She hung up without saying goodbye. It hurt. God, it hurt. But I reminded myself I'd spent my entire first life prioritizing them, and they'd never prioritize me back. I died alone in a parking lot, and I didn't even know if they'd cried at my funeral. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving that year either. Instead, I volunteered at a free clinic serving the homeless population. It was where I met Dr. Patricia Alvarez, the woman who would change everything. Dr. Alvarez was in her 60s, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She ran the clinic with ruthless efficiency and boundless compassion. She noticed me immediately, probably because I was the only medical student there who seemed to actually know what I was doing. thanks to my previous life's experience. You're good at this, she said as I sutured a patient's laceration with steady hands. Better than you should be for a first year. I smiled. I study a lot. Studying doesn't give you that kind of clinical judgment. You move like someone who's done this before. I had done it before, hundreds of times. But I just shrugged. Good instincts, I guess. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I could use someone with good instincts. How would you feel about working here regularly? I can't pay much, but it's better experience than anything you'll get in your school's simulation lab. I agreed immediately. In my first life, I'd never found this clinic, never met Dr. Alvarez. I'd spent my free time trying to maintain relationships with people who didn't value me. This time, I was building something real. My family's calls became less frequent as I became less available. Emma's birthday came and went. I sent a card but didn't come home. Christmas was tense. I came for 2 days instead of 2 weeks and spent most of that time fielding passive-aggressive comments about how busy I was and how medical school has changed you. You're becoming cold, my mother said on Christmas Eve, after I'd declined to stay up late assembling Emma's elaborate gift. You used to be so sweet and helpful. I used to be a doormat, I said quietly. There's a difference. She'd looked at me like I'd slapped her, but I was free. For the first time in my life, I was free. I threw myself into my studies with a focus I'd never managed in my first life, because this time I wasn't exhausted from emotional labor and family drama. I remembered the material from before, which let me study more efficiently and deeply. I challenged myself with harder cases, more complex research. I built relationships with my professors based on genuine intellectual respect rather than desperate people-pleasing. And I worked with Dr. Alvarez every week at the free clinic. She became my mentor, my role model, and something close to a surrogate mother, though I'd never have presumed to call her that. She pushed me, challenged me, believed in me. She never missed a single milestone. When I aced my board exams, she took me out for dinner. When I published my first research paper, she framed it and hung it in the clinic. When I was inducted into the Medical Honor Society, she was in the front row, beaming with pride. Your family couldn't make it? She asked afterward, noticing the empty seats. Emma's birthday weekend, I said simply. Dr. Alvarez's expression hardened. They know you're in medical school, right? One of the top programs in the country? They know, they just don't care. She squeezed my shoulder. Then they're fools, but their loss is my gain. I'm proud of you, Sarah. Prouder than I can express. I'd almost cried. Almost, but I'd learned to hold back my tears years ago. In my third year, Dr. Alvarez pulled me aside after a particularly rough shift at the clinic. I want to tell you something, she said. Something I don't share with most people. She told me about her daughter, who'd died 10 years earlier from complications during childbirth, how she'd thrown herself into the clinic afterward, trying to honor her daughter's memory by serving others, how she'd never quite gotten over the loss but had learned to live with it. You remind me of her, she said softly. Your dedication, your compassion, the way you fight for your patients even when you're exhausted. She paused. I don't have any children anymore, Sarah. And you don't seem to have parents who appreciate you, so I have a proposition. She offered me a position after graduation. Not just any position, a partnership in a new practice she was opening. A private concierge medical service for high-profile clients, with a portion of our time dedicated to continuing the free clinic work. The kind of opportunity that could set my entire career on a path to success. I can't offer you much money up front, she admitted. We'll be building something from scratch. But I can offer you mentorship, connections, and a real future, if you're willing to work for it. I remembered my first life, where I'd accepted a standard residency position, ground myself down in a hospital system that didn't value me, and died before I'd ever had a chance to build the career I dreamed of. Yes, I said without hesitation. Absolutely yes. That conversation happened 2 years before my medical school graduation. 2 years I spent not just surviving medical school, but thriving. Building my resume, making connections, publishing research. becoming the kind of doctor I'd never had the energy or support to be in my first life. My family noticed my absence more and more, but never in a way that mattered. The calls asking me to come home became less frequent, replaced by occasional texts that felt more like obligations than genuine attempts to connect. They still expected me at Emma's birthday parties, but I rarely came, and when I did, I stayed an hour, smiled politely, and left. Emma, to her credit, never seemed to notice or care. She was too wrapped up in her own life, a life that I noticed was following the same disappointing trajectory as my first timeline. She was on her fourth dream job, none of which lasted more than 6 months. She was dating a string of men who were charming but unreliable. She was racking up credit card debt that my parents kept quietly paying off. In my first life, I'd felt guilty about Emma's failures, as if my success somehow made her look worse by comparison. This time, I felt nothing but a detached sadness. She'd been given every advantage, every opportunity, every bit of support and financial backing that I'd never received. The fact that she'd squandered it wasn't my fault or my responsibility. The final turning point came 6 months before my graduation. I was studying in my apartment when my phone rang. My father. He never called unless he wanted something. "Sarah, we need to talk about Emma's birthday." "Her 25th?" I said, already knowing where this was going. "Sure, what about it?" "We want to do something really special. She's been going through a tough time." Emma was always going through a tough time. And we thought a big celebration would lift her spirits. Your mother and I are planning a destination party. A weekend in Napa Valley. Wine tasting, spa treatments, the whole thing. "That sounds nice," I said neutrally. "The thing is, we need everyone there. Family is important, and we thought, well, we know you have some medical school thing that weekend." "My graduation, Dad." "My medical school graduation." A pause. "Right, that. The thing is, Sarah, you've always been so independent, so strong. Emma really needs us right now, and you know how you are. You'll be fine without us. But Emma, she won't understand if you miss her party." In my first life, I'd agreed. I'd let them skip my graduation. Again. This time, I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. "Sarah?" My father sounded confused. Probably because I'd never laughed at him before. "No, Dad." "No?" "No, I'm not missing my medical school graduation so you can celebrate Emma's birthday 2 weeks early in Napa Valley. That's not happening." "Sarah, don't be selfish." "I'm going to stop you right there," I said, my voice hard. I have been the opposite of selfish my entire life. I've bent over backward for this family. I've skipped my own milestones. I've celebrated Emma's every minor achievement, while my major ones went ignored. I've asked for nothing and been given less. That ends now. "How dare you, sir? I'm graduating from medical school, Dad. One of the top programs in the country. I'm going to be a doctor. This is the culmination of 7 years of brutal, exhausting work that I did entirely on my own, without any support from you or Mom. You will not take this from me for Emma's birthday party. If you don't come to Napa, then I don't come. That's fine. I'll be at my graduation, which you're invited to attend if you can tear yourselves away from Emma for one afternoon." But I'm not holding my breath. I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But I felt light, lighter than I'd felt in years, in both lives. My mother called an hour later, then Emma, then my mother again. The messages were variations on the same theme. I was being cruel, I was being selfish, I was tearing the family apart. How could I do this to Emma? Didn't I care about anyone but myself? I blocked them all for a week. I needed space to breathe, space to focus on my finals and board exams and graduation preparations, space to exist without their guilt and manipulation. Dr. Alvarez noticed my mood shift. "Family troubles?" "Always," I said with a weak smile. "They're not coming to graduation, are they?" "No, they have a more important party to attend." She nodded slowly. "Sarah, I want you to know something. The family you're born into isn't always the family you're meant to have. Sometimes we have to build our own families, people who choose us, who value us, who show up for us. Like you've shown up for me," I said quietly. Like I've shown up for you, she confirmed. And like I'll continue to show up for you. I'll be at your graduation, front row center. And afterward, we're going to celebrate properly. I've invited some colleagues, people I want you to meet, people who can help launch your career, people who will appreciate what an extraordinary doctor you're becoming. I hugged her then, unable to hold back my tears anymore. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for seeing me. Oh, sweetheart, she said, hugging me back fiercely. You're impossible to miss. Your family are just fools who never learn to look. The week before graduation, I unblocked my family's numbers. There were dozens of messages, most were guilt trips. A few were angry rants, but one, from my father, caught my attention. We've decided to attend your graduation after all. Emma's party will be the evening before. We'll drive straight from Napa. Don't expect us to be well rested, but we'll be there, see? We do support you. I stared at that message for a long time. In my first life, I'd have been pathetically grateful for this. I'd have told myself that this was a turning point, that they were finally coming around, that my hard work was finally being recognized. Now, I just felt tired. They were coming to my graduation like it was a burden, like they were doing me a favor by squeezing me in between Emma's party and their drive home. They weren't coming because they were proud. They were coming because they didn't want to look bad. But fine, let them come. Let them sit in those seats and watch me walk across that stage. Let them see what I'd accomplished without them, and then let them learn what else I'd been doing behind the scenes. Graduation day dawned clear and bright. I dressed carefully in my cap and gown, straightened my honor. Cords, there were several of them, awards and distinctions I'd earned that my family knew nothing about. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I was proud of, someone strong, someone who'd survived death and been given a second chance to live properly. Dr. Alvarez picked me up at my apartment. Ready? She asked. So ready. The ceremony was beautiful. The auditorium was packed with families celebrating their graduates. I saw my classmates hugging their parents, taking photos, crying happy tears together. For a moment, just a moment, I felt that old ache of longing. Then I saw Dr. Alvarez in the front row, beaming at me. Next to her were three of her colleagues from the new practice. Dr. James Chen, a renowned cardiologist, Dr. Lisa Morrison, a brilliant surgeon, and Dr. Robert Park, who ran one of the most successful medical consulting firms in the state. They'd all come for me. They were all smiling at me. My family was there too, near the back. They'd arrived late, looking tired and annoyed. Emma was with them, scrolling on her phone, clearly bored. My mother was checking her watch. My father was already looking toward the exit. I felt nothing. No hurt, no anger, no disappointment. Just a calm certainty that I'd made the right choice in pulling away. When they called my name, Sarah Mitchell, Doctor of Medicine, magna cum laude, with distinction in emergency medicine and research, I walked across that stage with my head high. Dr. Alvarez whooped loudly, making the other attendees laugh. My family clapped politely, the same way they'd clap for any stranger. After the ceremony, I didn't seek them out. Instead, I went to where Dr. Alvarez was waiting with her colleagues. Congratulations, Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Chen said, shaking my hand firmly. Patricia has told us great things about you. We've reviewed your research, and we're impressed. Very impressed, Dr. Morrison added. We'd like to discuss some opportunities with you. Dr. Park smiled. Patricia mentioned you'll be joining her new practice. We'd like to be involved as well. We think what you two are building could be revolutionary. We were deep in conversation about medical innovation and patient care models when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Sarah, my mother's voice was tight. We're ready to go. We need to drive Emma back home. She has an early brunch tomorrow. I turned slowly. My family stood there looking impatient. Emma was still on her phone. I'm in the middle of a conversation, Mom. We drove all this way. The least you could do is spend some time with us. Dr. Alvarez stepped forward, her expression cool. I'm sorry. Are you Sarah's family? My mother blinked, clearly taken aback by the elegant older woman addressing her. Yes, I'm her mother, How wonderful that you could make it. I'm Dr. Patricia Alvarez. Sarah has been working with me for the past 3 years. She's extraordinary, one of the most talented young doctors I've ever had. The privilege of teaching. Oh, my mother said, clearly not sure how to respond. That's nice. It's more than nice, Darchen interjected. Sarah's research on emergency medicine protocols in underserved communities is groundbreaking. We're already seeing interest from major medical journals. My father perked up at that. Research? What kind of research? The kind that saves lives, Dr. Morrison said. Sarah's work has the potential to change how we approach emergency care in low-income areas. She's being considered for several prestigious awards. I watched my parents' faces as they processed this. They'd never asked about my research. They'd never asked about anything, really. They had no idea what I'd been doing for the past 4 years. Emma finally looked up from her phone. Wait, you're going to be famous? She already is in our circles, Dr. Park said. Dr. Mitchell is exactly the kind of innovative thinker the medical field needs. There was an awkward silence. My family was realizing, I think, that they'd missed something. Something big. Well, my mother finally said, we should celebrate. Let's go to dinner, our treat. Actually, I said calmly, I already have plans. Dr. Alvarez has organized a celebration dinner with several colleagues and potential partners for the practice. It's a working dinner, lots of networking and business discussions. Cancel it, my father said. Family comes first. I looked at him for a long moment. In my first life, I'd have canceled. I'd have eaten a quiet, awkward dinner with them while they talked about Emma's party and barely acknowledged my achievement. Then I'd have driven home alone and told myself that at least they'd come. No, I said. I'm not canceling. This dinner is important for my career. You're welcome to join us if you'd like, but it's going to be several hours of medical discussions and business talk. That sounds boring, Emma said immediately. Then don't come, I said simply. My mother's face was turning red. Sarah Mitchell, I did not raise you to be this rude. You didn't raise me at all, I said quietly. The words hung in the air like a bomb. You raised Emma. You gave her everything, your time, your money, your attention, your love. You gave me the scraps. And you know what? I'm grateful because it taught me to survive on my own, to build my own support system, to find people who actually value me. I gestured to Dr. Alvarez and her colleagues. These people have been more family to me in 3 years than you've been in 25. They show up. They're proud of me. They invest in my success. So, no, I'm not canceling my plans with them to have dinner with people who couldn't even be bothered to remember my graduation date without being reminded. How dare you, my mother whispered. I dare because I'm done, I said. I'm done begging for your approval. I'm done competing with Emma for basic parental affection. I'm done sacrificing my achievements for her birthday parties. I'm done. I turned back to Dr. Alvarez. Shall we go? I believe our reservation is in 30 minutes. Of course, dear, she said, linking her arm through mine. Congratulations again, Dr. Mitchell. As we walked away, I heard Emma's voice. Mom, what just happened? I didn't hear my mother's response. I didn't care. The celebration dinner was incredible. Dr. Alvarez had reserved a private room at an upscale restaurant, and what I'd thought would be a small gathering turned out to be 20 people. All medical professionals who'd heard about me through Dr. Alvarez's enthusiastic recommendations. They asked intelligent questions about my research. They offered advice, connections, opportunities. They toasted my success and meant it. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, really, truly seen. Speech, someone called out, and the others echoed the call. I stood, my glass in hand, and looked around at these people who'd chosen to celebrate me. I don't have a prepared speech, I admitted, but I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in me. And thank you especially to Dr. Alvarez, who saw potential in me when I needed it most. I paused, feeling emotional. Someone told me recently that the family we're born into isn't always the family we're meant to have. That sometimes we have to build our own families. Looking around this room, I think I've built something pretty extraordinary. So, here's to chosen family, here's to people who show up, and here's to the future we're going to build together. The applause was thunderous. After dinner, Dr. Alvarez pulled me aside. I have something for you, she said, handing me an envelope. A graduation gift. Inside was a check, a substantial check. Patricia, I can't. It's not a gift, she clarified. It's an investment, a signing bonus for joining the practice. Use it to pay down your student loans, get a nice apartment, buy a car that doesn't sound like it's dying. You've earned it. I hugged her tightly. I won't let you down. You never have, she said. And you never will. My family tried calling several times over the next few days. I didn't answer. I was busy apartment hunting, loan consolidating, and preparing for my residency. Finally, my mother left a voicemail. Sarah, we need to talk about your behavior at graduation. It was unacceptable. We came all that way to support you, and you were incredibly rude to us. Emma is very hurt by what you said. Your father and I are very disappointed. Call us back so we can discuss this properly. I deleted it without responding. A week later, Emma called. Sarah, it's me. Listen, I'm sorry about whatever happened at your graduation. I wasn't really paying attention. But Mom and Dad are being weird, and I think it has something to do with you. Emma, I said calmly, do you know what I've been doing for the past 4 years? Medical school? Do you know what my research is about? What awards I've won? What kind of doctor I'm going to be? Silence. Do you know what Dr. Alvarez does? Or who Dr. Chen is? Or what kind of practice I'm joining? More silence. Emma, you don't know anything about my life because you've never asked. None of you have. And that's fine. But don't call me now pretending to care just because Mom and Dad are upset that I finally stood up for myself. That's not fair, Emma protested. You've always been so busy. I've always been busy because I had to be. Because I didn't have parents funding my life. Because I was building a career while you were figuring out your 5th major. And you know what? I'm grateful for that now. Because it made me strong. I softened my voice slightly. Emma, I don't hate you. I don't even blame you. Not really. You were just a kid who got spoiled by parents who didn't know better. But I can't keep pretending we're a close family when we're not. I can't keep sacrificing my life for yours. I'm done with that pattern. So what, you're just cutting us off? I'm setting boundaries. I'm protecting myself. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be real. It has to be reciprocal. No more last-minute demands to skip my events for yours. No more being treated like my success is less important than your convenience. Equal effort or nothing. You've changed, Emma said, and she sounded almost scared. I've grown up, I corrected. There's a difference. She hung up without saying goodbye. The next few months were a whirlwind. My residency at the hospital Dr. Alvarez was affiliated with was demanding but fulfilling. I worked long hours, but this time it felt purposeful rather than punishing. I was learning, growing, making a real difference in patients' lives. The practice Dr. Alvarez and I were building started to take shape. We secured funding from Dr. Park's network of medical investors. Dr. Chen and Dr. Morrison signed on as consulting partners. We found a beautiful space for our offices, modern, welcoming, state-of-the-art equipment. We hired a small but excellent staff, and we made a name for ourselves quickly. Our model of combining high-end concierge care with free community clinic services caught the attention of the medical community. We were featured in medical journals, local news, even a national healthcare podcast. Dr. Alvarez and I were invited to speak at conferences, to consult on healthcare policy, to train other practitioners in our methods. My research was published in a prestigious journal. The awards Dr. Chen had mentioned started coming in. a young researcher grant, an Innovation in Medicine Award, recognition from my medical school as a distinguished recent graduate. And through it all, my family was silent. No calls, no texts, no congratulations. It was like I'd ceased to exist for them. I told myself I didn't care. And mostly, I didn't. I was too busy building the life I'd always dreamed of. But then, about 8 months after my graduation, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Dr. Mitchell, this is Catherine from the emergency department at St. Mary's Hospital. We have your father here. He listed you as his emergency contact. My blood ran cold. What happened? Heart attack. He's stable now, but he's asking for family. I was at the hospital in 20 minutes. My father looked small in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs. He was pale, frightened, suddenly vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. My mother sat beside him, looking haggard. Emma was there too, scrolling her phone in the corner, but at least present. "Sarah," my father said when he saw me. His voice was weak. "You came." "Of course I came," I said, immediately falling into doctor mode. I checked his chart, reviewed his vitals, confirmed the treatment plan with his attending physician. It was a moderate heart attack, serious but survivable with proper care and lifestyle changes. When I came back into the room, my mother grabbed my hand. "Thank God you're here." We didn't know who else to call. I found that darkly amusing. After all those months of silence, they'd called me when they needed a doctor. "He's going to be fine," I said professionally, "but he'll need to make significant changes. Diet, exercise, stress management, and he'll need regular follow-up care." "Can you be his doctor?" my mother asked. "No," I said immediately. "I don't treat family members. It's unethical and impractical, but I can recommend excellent cardiologists." "But you're his daughter," she protested. "Exactly, which is why I shouldn't be his doctor. Dr. Chen would be perfect for Dad's case. I'll make the introduction." My father was studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You've done well for yourself," he said finally. "I've been hearing things about your practice, your awards." "Who told you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "We didn't have any mutual friends." "Dr. Park," he admitted. "I used his consulting firm for some business advice. He mentioned you, spoke very highly of you, said you were going to be one of the top doctors in the field." I laughed softly. Small world. "He said you've changed the way emergency care is delivered in underserved areas, that hospitals are adopting your protocols, that you're being considered for a National Healthcare Advisory Board." I shrugged. "I've been busy." "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked, and she sounded hurt. I looked at her directly. "When would I have told you, Mom? During the calls you never made? At the events you never attended? You haven't spoken to me since graduation, and even then, you only came because you felt obligated." "That's not true," she protested weakly. "It is true, and you know what? It's fine. I made peace with it. I found people who care about me, who support me, who show up for me. I built a life I'm proud of. I don't need your validation anymore." "But we're your family," Emma said from the corner, looking up from her phone for once. "Biology doesn't make a family," I said. "Love does, support does, being present does. I have a family now, they're just not you." The room fell silent. My father closed his eyes, and I couldn't tell if it was from exhaustion or emotion. "I'm sorry," he said finally, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "I'm sorry we weren't better parents to you." I felt something crack inside me, some wall I'd built to protect myself. But I couldn't afford to let it crumble. Not now. Not after I'd worked so hard to break free. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "I appreciate it, but an apology doesn't erase decades of neglect. It doesn't give me back the moments you missed. It doesn't undo the damage of growing up feeling invisible in my own family." "What can we do?" my mother asked, and she was crying now. "How do we fix this?" "I don't know if you can," I said honestly. The person I was, the daughter who desperately wanted your approval, she died a long time ago. In a hospital parking lot, I thought but didn't say. The person I am now doesn't need you the way she used to. I'm complete without you. But you came when we called, my father said, because I'm a doctor and you were in the hospital. I'd have come for anyone. That's who I am. Emma stood up suddenly. You're being really cruel, Sarah. Dad just had a heart attack. Do you have to rub it in right now that you're better than us? I'm not better than you, I said tiredly. I'm just different than you thought I was. You all had this image of me as the strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need anything from anyone. You used that image to justify neglecting me, to make yourselves feel better about prioritizing Emma. But it was never true. I needed you just as much as she did. I just learned to survive without you. So what now? My mother asked. Now Dad gets better. He follows his treatment plan. He makes healthier choices. And you all, I paused, considering. You all have to decide if you want an actual relationship with me or if you want to keep pretending we're a family, because I'm done with pretending. Of course we want a relationship, my mother said immediately. Then prove it. Show up. Not just when you need something from me, but regularly. Be interested in my life. Ask about my work, remember my important dates. Stop making everything about Emma. Treat me like I matter. We can do that, my father said. We'll see, I said. But understand this, I'm not giving you another chance out of desperation. I'm giving you a chance out of growth. I'm a different person now. I have boundaries, I have expectations, and I won't tolerate being treated as less than anymore. I left them with care instructions and Dr. Chen's contact information. As I walked out of the hospital, I felt lighter. I'd said everything I needed to say. Whether they heard it or not was up to them. Dr. Alvarez called as I was driving home. I heard about your father. How are you holding up? I'm okay, I said. It was plenty clarifying. Good. And Sarah, we got the approval. The board position you applied for. You're going to be the youngest advisor on the National Healthcare Innovation Committee. I pulled over, unable to drive through the wave of emotion. Really? Really, they were unanimous. Your work speaks for itself. And sweetheart, I know your family has never said this enough, but I'm so incredibly proud of you. I cried then, sitting in my car on the side of the road. But they were good tears, healing tears. The next few months brought more changes than I could have imagined. The advisory board position opened doors I'd never dreamed of. I was invited to the White House for a healthcare summit. I gave a TED Talk about reimagining medical care. I was interviewed by major news outlets about my work in underserved communities. The practice was thriving too. We had a wait list for our concierge services and had expanded our free clinic to 3 locations. We'd hired a dozen new staff members, including several medical students I was mentoring the way Dr. Alvarez had mentored me. And my family was trying. It started small. A text from my mother asking about my day. A call from my father sharing an article he'd read about healthcare policy asking for my opinion. An invitation from Emma to have coffee, just the two of us, where she actually asked about my work and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. They came to the opening of our 3rd clinic. They sat in the audience when I gave a lecture at my medical school. My mother sent flowers to my office after my TED Talk. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments where old patterns tried to reassert themselves. A request to change my schedule for Emma's convenience, an assumption that I'd drop everything for a family need. But now, when I said no, they accepted it. They were learning. My father, in particular, seemed changed by his heart attack. He'd retired early, focusing on his health and, surprisingly, on repairing his relationship with me. He came to the clinic once a week to volunteer, just administrative work, answering phones and filing paperwork, but he was there. He was present. I see it now, he said to me one day as we organized supply donations. What we did to you, how we made you feel. I'm ashamed, Sarah. I'm so ashamed. I appreciate that, Dad, I said carefully. But you can't change the past. You can only do better going forward. I want to, he said. I want to be the father you deserve. Then be him, I said simply. Emma and I developed a tentative friendship. She'd finally settled into a career, event planning, which suited her social nature, and was doing well. She'd stopped depending on our parents financially and seemed happier for it. We met for lunch once a month, and slowly we got to know each other as adults rather than as rivals for parental affection. I was jealous of you, she admitted one day. Growing up, you were so smart, so driven. Mom and Dad always held you up as the example of what I should be. I think they spoiled me to make up for the fact that I wasn't you. That must have been hard, I said, and I meant it. Having your worth measured against someone else's. It was, but it's not an excuse for how we treated you, or for how I treated you. I'm sorry, Sarah. Really sorry. It was the first genuine apology any of them had given me. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. My 28th birthday came, the age I'd died in my first life. I'd planned to spend it quietly, maybe with Dr. Alvarez and a few colleagues. But my family surprised me. They threw me a party. Not Emma's birthday party that happened to occur near mine. Not a dual celebration where I was the afterthought. A party just for me. It was at my parents' house, but they'd decorated with my favorite colors, served my favorite foods. The guest list was people from my life, my colleagues from the practice, friends from medical school, mentors from the hospital. Dr. Alvarez was there, of course, beaming with pride. And my family was there too, not as the center of attention, but as supporting players. They mingled with my friends, asking intelligent questions about my work, sharing appropriate stories about me. Emma gave a toast about how proud she was of her sister. My mother presented me with a photo album she'd made of my achievements. My graduation photos, articles about my work, pictures from my clinics. My father gave me a donation to the free clinic in my name. It was everything I'd ever wanted and had learned to live without. Happy birthday, sweetheart, Dr. Alvarez said, hugging me. 28 looks good on you. 28, the age I'd died before. But this time, I was so vibrantly alive. I was thriving. I was surrounded by people who loved me. I was doing work that mattered. I was happy. As I looked around the party, at the life I'd built from the ashes of my first one, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not to my family for finally showing up, though that was nice, but to myself, for having the courage to choose differently, for refusing to settle for scraps, for knowing my worth even when no one else did. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and thought about the girl I'd been. The one who died at 28 in a hospital parking lot, desperate for love she'd never receive. I wished I could tell her that it got better, that she deserved better, that she was enough, exactly as she was. But in a way, I had told her. By living differently this time, by choosing myself, by building a life that honored her pain and transformed it into purpose. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Thank you for letting us be part of your life again. We don't deserve it, but we're grateful every day. We love you. I smiled and replied, I love you too. See you next week. And I meant it. Not the desperate, needy love of my first life, but a mature, boundaried love. The kind of love that didn't require me to diminish myself. The kind of love that left room for me to be whole. 3 years later, I stood at a podium in front of several hundred people at a national healthcare conference. Dr. Alvarez was retiring, and she'd chosen me to give her keynote speech. The title of my presentation was Building Systems of Care: How One Clinic Changed Healthcare Delivery. But it was about so much more than that. It was about resilience, about choosing yourself, about building the life you deserve when the life you're given isn't enough. My family was in the audience, front row, not because I'd begged them to come, but because they'd asked if they could be there. Emma had her phone away for once, actually listening. My parents were taking notes, engaged and present. And next to them sat Dr. Alvarez, who would always be the person I credited with saving my life. Not from death, I'd done that myself somehow, but from a life half-lived, a life spent chasing approval from people who couldn't see my worth. As I spoke about the importance of recognizing value in unexpected places, of supporting the overlooked, of creating systems that elevate rather than diminish, I thought about the two versions of myself, the one who died forgotten and the one who stood here now, celebrated, and successful. The difference wasn't my circumstances, it was my choices. I chose to believe I was worth more than scraps. I chose to set boundaries instead of martyring myself. I chose to build my own family instead of begging for crumbs from people who couldn't see me. I chose myself, and that choice had saved my life in every way that mattered. After the speech, as people crowded around to congratulate me and discuss collaborations, Dr. Alvarez pulled me aside. "I have something to tell you," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I'm not just retiring from the practice, I'm moving to Portugal. I've bought a villa and I'm going to spend my days drinking wine and painting badly and being outrageously happy." "You deserve it," I said, hugging her tight. "But I want you to know," she continued, "that watching you grow into the doctor and woman you are has been the greatest privilege of my life. You remind me so much of my daughter, not in personality, but in spirit, in determination, in that fire that refuses to be extinguished. She would have loved you, and she would have been so proud of who you've become." I was crying openly now. "Sis, I wouldn't be here without you." "Oh, sweetheart," she said, cupping my face in her hands. "You'd have gotten here somehow. Maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe the road would have been harder. But that fire in you, nothing could have put that out. I just gave you some kindling and got out of your way." Family approached then, hovering uncertainly. "Dr. Alvarez," my mother said, "thank you. Thank you for seeing what we couldn't see. Thank you for being there when we weren't. Thank you for loving our daughter when we forgot how." Dr. Alvarez studied my mother for a long moment. "I didn't do anything special," she said finally. "I just showed up. I just paid attention. I just treated her like she mattered. That's not extraordinary parenting. That's basic human decency. The real question is why you thought it was acceptable to offer less." My mother flinched but nodded. "You're right, and we're trying to do better." "See that you do," Dr. Alvarez said, "because Sarah is extraordinary, and she deserves people in her life who recognize that every single day." Later, as the conference wound down and people drifted away, I found myself alone for a moment on the hotel's rooftop terrace. The city sprawled below me, lit up against the night sky. I thought about the path that had brought me here. The death, the rebirth, the choices, the struggles, the victories. I thought about the girl in the hospital parking lot and the woman on this rooftop, and I felt a profound sense of peace. I had been given a second chance, and I hadn't wasted it. I'd built a career that mattered, a practice that changed lives, a reputation that opened doors, a chosen family that cherished me. And yes, I'd even rebuilt a relationship with my birth family, though on my terms this time. With boundaries, with expectations, with the understanding that I didn't need them anymore, which paradoxically made it possible to have them in my life. I'd become the doctor I was always meant to be. Not despite my family's neglect, but through the strength it had forced me to develop. They chose her birthday over my graduation again, I thought, remembering that title from a lifetime ago. After Rebirth, they never knew I'd become a doctor. But I knew. And in the end, that was all that mattered. I pulled out my phone and looked at my calendar. Next month was Emma's 28th birthday. And the month after that, I was scheduled to receive a humanitarian award for my work in underserved communities. My family had already asked if they could attend the ceremony. I'd said yes, not because I needed them there, but because I wanted to share my success with people who'd learned to appreciate it, with people who'd grown enough to recognize what they'd almost lost. And maybe that was the real victory. Not that I no longer needed their approval, but that I'd become someone worthy of admiration, even from people who'd once overlooked me. I'd won, completely, thoroughly, triumphantly. Not by destroying them, they were still my family, still in my life, still trying. But by becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so genuinely happy that their early neglect became nothing more than a footnote in the story of my extraordinary life. The underdog had become the champion, the overlooked baichua. Daughter had become the celebrated doctor. The girl they'd chosen second had become first in every way that mattered, and she'd done it all herself. I raised my glass to the city, to the stars, to the second chance I'd been given and the life I'd built with it. To rebirth. I whispered, and to never forgetting what you're worth. The city lights twinkled back at me like applause. And somewhere, I like to think the girl in the parking lot was smiling, finally at peace, knowing that she'd fought her way back and won.